The last couple of weeks, I've been thinking about tutorials. Probably more than any one person should ever think about tutorials, and definitely more than anyone's ever really putting the time in. I think tutorials boil down into a few key things. Tutorials are fundamentally boring if you're experienced with the medium, because they don't internally reward you or the player for doing them. They're just something you need to go through before you can experience either like some form of the hero's journey of storytelling games, or in our case, we're building a kind of like roguelike with base building. It's in the way before you can truly enjoy it. Tutorials also have this kind of situational irony, where they're there to prevent frustration on the player, but they're often unskippable and therefore intentionally frustrating. And then everyone's had that experience where you skip the tutorial and then find there's a control that you really needed and you have to Google it, and that's equally frustrating. So it becomes this whole catch-22 where you can't avoid the tutorial or have the tutorial, and in both cases it's frustrating. I mean, we talked about previously like the Cuphead tutorial debacle, or like the games journalist thing, where we've seen hundreds of times where they were like, oh, the game's too hard, and it's that famous video, I'll put it up on the screen, of the games journalist failing to complete it. There's also loads of unskippable tutorials that help very little, and tutorials fundamentally are often inaccurate, which is the final problem. With inconsistent controls or different platform controls, sometimes they don't show the right control, like press A to continue when you're on a computer and it's the space bar, for example. Or sometimes, like this game is heavily inspired by, people forget to put the controls up at all. Here you can see in Binding of Isaac, they had the controls listed for the first version of Flash, but when they made the remake, they forgot to put any directions on the screen whatsoever, other than some indicate arrows. So we're going to try and work through and make something that's engaging and useful. This was all, of course, brought about by the fact that someone was playtesting my game on the Discord that I'll link below in the description, and they brought up the fact that they needed to know some of the controls. Because for now, I've been working hugely on like the bosses, the infrastructure, the crop growing, etc., but I forgot to tell anyone how you actually do any of it without hopping on a call with me and explaining it to you. So let's try and solve these issues. Okay, I'm going to sketch out the layout of the tutorial. This way you can get a feel for how it pulls together before I show you what is being built and how we're going to build it. First room will be called Move. Move is obviously where we give them the basic instructions for how to move in the game. We'll remember the controls, unlike Binding of Isaac, and we'll make them modular assets so we can replace them with new control schemes. They'll then go into Craft 1. That's going to be where we set up the obstacle where they need to craft something in order to proceed. I've changed it a few ways, but basically this will be the area that you transition out of the tutorial. Then from that, we'll head into the next section, lovingly called Craft 2. But that's really just an area where there'll be some danger. It's an introductory level of danger. Probably dodging things, spike traps, those kind of areas. But that will have the machine that is required to solve Craft 1 in Craft 2. So you'll have to backtrack. You'll go to the machine, then you'll come back into Craft 1, and you'll have some kind of information. Now you're going to need some more resources to finish the crafting. So for now, we're going to add another room, and we'll call that right now just colloquially, so we're on the same page, Fight. And here we'll put some kind of enemy. And you can also see my original terrible notebook sketches, which I thought would be funny to include there. And that pretty much summarizes all of the upcoming stuff. You follow? Good. Think of a better way other than actually showing them, a way of describing the movement. So I made some base assets here that look like sunken tiles. I may rework it a little, but that way I can override them when we change to a mobile control scheme or if you change them in a menu. I also made some little lights here because I thought they were really pretty and it draws attention to the base controls. We got a little advantage as well, where because the player is always in the same path. I can add a little dirt track, a couple of mushrooms and stuff, which is different from the rest of my game where it's procedurally generated tiles. So, I mean, let's try and give it a little visual flair. I know my game's not the most pretty thing, but I'm trying. All right. Then after room 1, we're going to move into the first iteration of craft. I've changed this. We'll come back to it later. Initially, I thought I was being smart with a dart trap that breaks the log so that I could show them how that works and use a key, but we won't. This, however, is craft 2, where we will be keeping this. It's got the heat press up there. You can see there's some dart traps and spikes. I'm okay with that. We'll roll with that. But you can see the kind of initial idea of where I'll like take an item from a room that's already been present. They'll be able to see that the heat trap has a thing, and then I'll be able to craft it into another thing. Here I'm making coal. Okay, so this is what I changed the first room to. It's called craft 1. There's not really much here. I'm gonna add another sprite to the right of this, where it's like something is clearly blocked by this pile, and give it a collision box. But if they go over to it right now and they hit E, you go, damn, this is blocked. I need a shovel to clear this debris, right? And then after that, they'll go, okay, well, where's the shovel? And they might head up here, find this room. This is a later iteration. I'm trying to add some three-dimensionality to it. I hate it. It looks horrendous. We're definitely keeping the old version. So this over here is the fight room. Got a default enemy. The snake says something, and then you got like this shard of metal, and this string, right? That kind of will both be used in ingredients to crafting the shovel to clear the debris that lets you out of the tutorial. So the snake wasn't the first idea. Originally, I was going to have this thing so lovingly called, I think it's called Crunch, or Chunk, which is going to throw up on you, right? He's kind of meant to be a stationary, middle of the room kind of guy, and he spews on you. But after making him and kind of doing some of the initial sprite frames, you can see here, super gross. I love that. That's my favorite thing about him. That he's super gross. But the problem is, like, I think he might be a little too complicated for the first boss level, and I would much rather use him for other things. So that's when I implemented the snake. The snake is currently just runs at you, and he chases you down. I can even show you. I'll do a video on the fact I added a console to my game as well, but maybe after this one. We'll ignore this one, right? He currently just chases you down, right? And he doesn't even rotate in direction. So I've got some work to do on him. But I want more spitting enemies in my game, more enemies that shoot at you, because I have a lot of things that will run you down at the moment. I don't have a lot of things that will throw something at you, and that's why I want the snake. He's more fundamental, he's easier to dodge. I think he's a better like first enemy encounter kind of low level thing, and I'll save this concept for a more advanced further layer in the dungeon, or perhaps some more difficult rooms further down the line. So that's where we're up to as far as tutorial goes at the moment. We've made some progress into at least trying to make it slightly interesting, with an element of combat and risk and investigation, because we don't tell you everything, where you have to find this item is craftable by going into the dangerous room and interacting with the machine and then pulling that together. I think in the next part of this, I'll go over some of the stuff you've already seen today in the background clips, etc., where like how we add items to the game, what that's set up as, maybe the console, maybe my room generation as well. There's a huge amount of code that I've been working on this, and I've been working on for a while without really telling anyone, and this is my first foray into explaining pieces and where else to start other than the tutorial. So if you are interested in seeing some more of the code stuff, or you have any suggestions about how we improve where we're going with the tutorial already right now, I would love to hear that. I'll also manage to show you some more of the gameplay in the next part. We can talk about how we're going to do all the bullet stuff with the snake, and that will give me an introduction to show you my my enemy controller and the inheritance structure that I've built into it. I hope you guys enjoyed part 1, or Dev 0. It's a difficult one. I don't know where to start with this. I've made so much progress in this game behind the scenes, and it's really just a passion project for me, hence the name. I can't dream, so you must starve. I feel like it's my creative dream to put this thing out, and hopefully some people are interested in playing it when I'm finished. But even not, then I would have had a great time making it. Thank you for watching, Dev0. Please hit subscribe. Follow me Twitter at miserablecoder if you're interested in sequential updates or pre-updates before I make another video here. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend or whatever day of the week it is for you, and I'll talk to you in the next one.